Jeg ved ikke, hvad den hedder.
Cheers.
Cheers. Do you take milk in your tea?
This one is green tea. I've run out of milk, so this one is...
So hi everybody and welcome to this conversation. It's going to be an informal talk between Theatre Madam Bach, Christian and Pernille, and Caspar Addyman from Goldsmiths University in the UK. And we have approximately 1 hour. We will go through some topics. We might go a bit off the topics as well. That's what happens sometimes. I've asked all of you to mute yourselves during the talk, but you're most welcome to write questions or comments in the chat along the way, and we'll try to keep an eye on that as well. Yeah, I have another one joining us. So the occasion for this talk is actually the Small Size Days, and which is happening all over the world as we speak this weekend. And this year, a contribution from Theatre Madam Bach is this conversation with Caspar Addyman. We're very delighted to have you with us, Caspar. Finally, we've been talking about this for years, actually. Yeah. So just very briefly, my name is Anne, and I'll be moderating the talk. I'm a dramaturg and also a long-term collaborator of Theatre Madam Bach. The overall topic for the conversation will be growth or growing. And it came about because Theatre Madam Bach did a show 2 years ago, which is still touring nationally and internationally. It's called Grow. And of course, we have a lot of thoughts about that topic. And we thought this would be very interesting for a developmental psychologist, such as Caspar Addyman. He might have some thoughts about that as well. So before I give the word to the two of you, I think I will just share the trailer from that show for those of you who haven't seen it, or those of you who don't know much about Theatre Madam Bach. You will get a little bit of an insight into what that might be.
Alting gror. Græs, myreture, vandpytter, venskab. En mand plantede et træ i en ørken. Det gjorde han hver dag i 37 år. Træerne voksede, og en dag var der en regnskov.
Elefanter.
Aber.
Myreslur.
Sommerfugl.
På bunden af havet vokser der skove af tang. Alting bliver større, når man ser det igennem et forstørrelsesglas.
Myr har 6 ben. Græshoppevinger har mønstre.
Muslingeskaller har riller.
Når Esther cykler gennem byen, så spreder hun tusindvis af vilde plantefrø.
Ukrudt alle vegne.
Når man er lille, så vokser man mest, når man sover.
Wonderful.
Yes, a little glimpse into Theatre Madam Bach's world. But
I miss
actually,
the audience.
yes, we miss the audience. But maybe we should start with you, Caspar. Could I ask you just about your curiosity as a baby scientist? What is your interest in children's theatre as such? How does that differ from your work at InfantLab?
Yes, so I got to know Christian and Pernille when they attended a theatre performance at Polka Theatre, which I was involved in, where they Sarah Argent and the team there created the lab recreated the lab in the theatre. So that was a little collaboration where we were brought in as scientists to sort of explain what is it that we do with babies, and then it was amazing that, so my job every day is to take these babies into the lab and try and hold their attention with something on a screen, something that they might not have seen before, to see how they all react, and then start to be able to try and understand how the baby's understanding the world. And it was incredible how much of a parallel there was between doing that and what was done in creating theatre for babies and young children, where again you're aiming to hold their attention and guide them through something. But to do that, you really have to understand how they see the world, how they're interpreting what you're presenting. And so I learned so much from that collaboration of just how you hold a baby's attention and sort of what things capture their interest, which, in a typical science experiment, we manage to, if we think we're doing quite well if we hold a baby's attention for 5 minutes. These shows are 40 minutes, sometimes a whole hour, where you have really young people engaged and entranced, it's magic to me, but it's sort of something that I'm always hoping I can learn from.
So maybe Christian and Pernille, you can say a little bit about this magic that you do, and why you find it interesting to be in conversation with people like Caspar, who come from a different background, but there seems to be a lot of overlapping interests somehow.
Yeah, I like when we was meeting, it was the first time I these two worlds are meeting for me, and I find it so interesting because in a way it is the same, and in a way it's not. And it's inspired me so much that, for example, you use a lot of time to find one thing, and for me, when we are working, we have so many different kind of things that we put in, and when we make the performance, we working very much about the theme, and the curious is one.
The curiosity is one.
Yes.
I mean, and we approach a theme and a topic with we call it a big curiosity. I mean, overall, for example, grow. It's not only, for example, this one. It's a beam. This is for a project we do with 20 Japanese families right now. So this is 6 days. Crazy. Okay. So it's not only nature, it's also my feet when I was little. They grow, and elephants and cities. And
yes, if we try to make a big curious, to make it big, and then we also put it very small.
Yeah.
And this is the way when we started make the performance. And then we work a lot about how are we make it? We make it with, yeah, this is, you know, how they use the eyes is very important for us. How they listen, how they use the ears, and how they how we can put movements,
yeah,
in the performance, and how the children act with the way we make the text. Because when we make the performance, one thing is how when we make it, and the next step is to find out how the children act on it.
The interaction between us is really, that's the, I mean, if the show is 70%, then we have 30% is when we do the live thing.
Yeah.
So
it's very important for us to have, for example, we also every time have a light on the children, because we can see them.
Yeah.
Because else we cannot you know, see how they're reacting.
So this is has a lot to do with how to keep children's attention.
Oh yeah.
Really. And also when we spoke the other day, Caspar, you mentioned this saying in English. We don't have it in Danish, I think, with the orchids and the dandelions, which I found was really interesting.
Yeah, so I think this is sort of linking nicely from once the children are in that performance, you can't predict what that each audience is going to be different, and you want to sort of adapt to all of that. And this led us, when we were talking on Monday, to this idea, which is sort of mentioned in some educational circles, of children being either more like, some children are more like dandelions, and some are more like orchids. So the orchid obviously needs very specific conditions under which to thrive, but when it does, it sort of grows up in this very beautiful way. And dandelions, they sort of grow everywhere. They're sort of utterly resilient, and sort of whatever circumstances you put them in, they cope. And this is a spectrum of how children react to new situations, and it's still actually something where research is trying to work out what exactly is it that makes you that resilient individual, or that sort of quite sensitive individual. And if you think about it from, well, how would a scientist go about looking at that? It's actually pretty difficult to study something like that. And it also, when you present it like that, the downside is that people then just start to say it has to be either one or the other, rather than, oh well, you could be very resilient in your response to academic learning, but terribly lacking in resilience in your social adaptation, and then somebody else could have exactly the opposite pattern. So you shouldn't, you know, it's a useful growth metaphor that it's nice to bring into things. It also leads to a lot of teachers thinking about, like, how do I run my classroom? So am I providing a very structured environment that that I can see how things are going to grow, or should it be this more wide open to let all these possibilities in?
Yeah.
But yeah,
So I suppose
the growth metaphor is very much wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
Big idea.
And how to be very aware of that when you do the theater performances, that, and I suppose that's why your work is quite complex, Christian and Pernille, because it's on many levels. It's visual, it's music, it's eye contact, it's story, so that everybody hopefully can follow on some level or another.
We often, I think that theater is very nice for the more sensitive children. I think. And we and for us, we working very much with, can we call it, the sensitive, the feelings of, and also when we, for example, make a scene, we try to make it so that there are different kind of children. Some, for example, we have a performance here for some.
Last month,
yes.
That was fun.
and there was a child who was standing up and was dancing all the time. He was dancing and moving to the performance. And there was one also that everything, when we're working with the text, we often put a very simple word in to make space if they want to go with us. And there was a child who say, for example,
he was repeating all the words.
Yes.
All the words, even the words he couldn't pronounce.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
So he was all the time in the talking.
Yeah.
And there also was something that I work very much about, that is where do I want a child to look? And some children are very fast. They look all the places. She follow me all the way. And sometimes, I have to make a little more break. So the child who's doing that, he need a little more time because he has to do it. Okay, I have to look there. And so make that space. We also, so how when we make the performance, we try to think and how can we make the space for the children to be there.
And they're adults as well.
Yeah, and the adults. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah,
it's a complex thing.
Yeah. I will try to move the conversation to a slightly different topic, because when we were doing the production of Grow, of course, we talked a lot about trees and feet and friendships and all of these things that can grow, but we were also trying to find out, okay, what's the essential thing for something to grow, and that we found out, of course, it's some kind of soil or nourishment, the right conditions, and the third component would be time. Nothing grows without time. So that was a big topic during the research for Grow, and I just want to share another clip. It's from the same show, a scene that we call Morfar's Have, my granddad's garden, and I'll just see if I can share that with you.
I min morfars have der tid nok. Og masser af sommer. pludselig et år. Min morfar, han blev 94 et halvt. Bøgetræ, de kan blive 400 år. Så bøgetræet, det står der mange år endnu. Alting har sin tid. Bøgetræer, min morfar og sommerfugl.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of stories and a lot of themes in that scene itself, also about time and death, decay, and all of this. But one thing that we were curious about, I remember, is this: why do we experience time so differently? Sometimes time just flies by, and other times we just a minute can seem like forever. And I was wanted to ask you, Caspar, what does science say about these things?
Yeah, so this is actually one of my research topics. I have investigated babies' perception of time, and we even built a new sort of conceptual model of how it works in the brain. For 40 years or more, people have been looking in the brain for little clocks. It's like, oh, time is clocks, isn't it? It's all about like something tick, 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 measuring out the same amounts of things each time. For 40 years, nobody's ever found that. And we, in our research, thought that time is actually much more like it's been presented here. It's events, it's sequences of events, which, you know, are stories. And that basically, and I think Christian sort of said this when we were talking on Monday, that, you know, time is memory, and this is exactly what we decided from a scientific point of view, that the human perception of time is just how many things have happened since I'm trying to measure something. And we built a computational model that matched sort of human data in a way that people trying to use clocks to measure this didn't really account for it. And it accounts really nicely for why is it that time goes quicker and slower, because the more events you have going in a sort of a period of your perception, the more it feels like time is rushing by. So when you're on a holiday, sort of, you know, there's so much time packed into that, you know, that week that you're away. So many things happened, and so time seems to be going fast. And so you get to the end, and oh, it's all over before you know it. But then when you look back, it's like there's so much that fitted into that gap. And then compare that to lockdown, where you know, people have been trapped in their houses in an unchanging environment for a whole week, and now the opposite is happening, you know, and especially if you're a child, that you're trapped and the day gets very, very long because there's nothing changing, and it just, time is going at, you know, snail's pace, and it's like, because there's no events, there's nothing changing, there's there aren't memories forming. And so as you're experiencing it, it feels really slow. And then when you look back on it, it's like, what happened this week? Nothing. And so the whole time Constantine is down, and then you have exactly the reverse pattern of, oh, this week seemed to take forever, but now that it's over, there's none of it that remains. And, you know, so time and sort of how things change over time obviously we can make clocks that tell us completely objectively what that is, but really for humans time is subjective, and that's beautifully shown in that piece we just saw.
Yeah.
We just have worked a little about when I'm working very much about what we remember, what is important in our life. So I use a lot of time to ask people if we have a theme, then I ask them why, and because memories is so interesting for me, what we remember, and also because I use a lot what I remember from when I was a child. My childhood, I find my childhood so great, so I find it so interesting in a way. But I have something that when I make this one, I want to make a story about time. The time where we give children space where the time is there's no time. It's the ending.
Endless.
Endless. Just to be in the garden, in my granddad's garden, and just
time stands still.
Yeah, the time stands still, and I find out that often people remember the same memories. And I think isn't it important for small children to make space for them where the time is, because, yeah, do you understand what I'm asking now?
Yeah, I think throw away the clocks, I think. Is
the
right way to think about that.
Exactly, away with the clock. I don't have any.
Yeah. I nearly forgot that this was happening this afternoon. It's like earlier today. Oh yes.
Yeah, I do think it's important to to have as much timeless time as possible, because that's probably what you remember when you grow old, I guess. Yeah, I just wanted to invite you all, if anybody has any questions, please write it in the chat or comments. You're very welcome to do so. Otherwise, we'll move on to yet another topic that we've been discussing, and that has to do with children's growth in relation to other people. It's about how you grow circles of friends, and about group dynamics. When we spoke with Caspar a few days ago, we talked a little bit about this thing that small children tend to follow around big children to learn from them. And just to start off the conversation, I will show you a video clip from the end of the show, where Kristen and Pernille are inviting the children to go backstage. You saw all the shadow plays in the front, and at the end of the show, the children are invited to go on a long path of grass behind the scenography to experience it from the other side. So I'll just share that with you.
Stemmer vokser om morgenen. Hunde vokser. Og ukrudt. Ja, det vokser alle steder.
Hvad der vokser også ukrudt.
Here we can see a body woman, or a body child, you know. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can start, Pernille and Christian, just by explaining a little bit, because again, a lot of things are actually happening in this sequence. Maybe you can tell a little bit about what you do and why you do it. And then, yeah.
We have, when we're beginning to make theater, we was very curious about how we could make theater where we could be together with the children without not saying you cannot do that, stop there,
giving orders,
giving orders. And so we try to find out how we can do it, and we find out if we do something in the scene. For example, here when I go with, this is a paper wall. This is a stupid thing in a way, but it's
very fragile.
It's very fragile.
They just touch it and it's destroyed.
Broken.
Yeah, it's
yes.
broken. Yeah.
But we do it because we want them to have that feeling of that this is
a fragile thing, and you have to be careful.
Exactly. And so when I go around with them, it's important what I'm doing. So I cannot touch, and I cannot touch the walls in the performance. If I touch the walls, they do it too.
They will copy you.
Yeah. If I touch the shadows or something, they do it too. So what I'm doing is very important. And then it's also how I'm talking. We try to find out how can we make a space also so the child can talk with us, comment, but not just blah 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 blah. So I have a text, and often you can see the little child, he started to say, oh, there is something on the car. And then we move again, a little bit, we go in on it, and then I move them to the next one. So it's all the time that we try to make the room, but not make the room so the children take over. And this is
and my focus point is the music. So in the end scene here, I create a calm atmosphere with a little guitar. So because then they follow the route, no problem. And then after 1 or 2 rounds, they need some more energy. So I put on the bass, boom, boom, and in the minute I do that, the atmosphere changes. They start talking. They start to move a little, but not too much. And then 1 or 2 more rounds with this, and then you have to change again. So my approach is the atmosphere and the music to create.
For example, it's important that we're not starting with music that is bah, 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 bah,
yeah,
because then it's important that they still sitting and that they're looking at the other children, what they're doing. They have to go around so they can see, oh, I have to go all the way around and I get a poster, and then we can loose up. So this is all the time how we can speak with them, and how also we can find out what is interesting for them. This is the way our cues all the time is.
This is our science.
That's your science
all the time. Yeah.
Caspar, what are your thoughts about this with older people? I call you older people, grown-ups, or older children guiding the way to tiny people.
Yes, it's this is a situation where Christian Pernille be very, very conscious of how to bridge that gap and how to sort of think about how little children are going to interact with this thing in front of them way differently from adults. And we often we often don't do this. In fact, usually people sort of have very real difficulty imagining what the world is like through the eyes of a child. It's only sort of if you're sort of having contact with a range of children every day, that you get to sense that, right, they all see the world slightly differently, and that they don't have this experience that we bring to everything. So this is something often is called, the curse of knowledge, that once you know something, it's hard to imagine not knowing that thing. It's really hard to think what the world looks like for the first time. This is something that sort of clearly have to really discover and pay attention to if you're going to do something as brave as put children within grabbing distance of these very delicate props. And it also sort of like where we started this conversation about how little children follow slightly bigger children around is they know that the gap between themselves and these really bigger people, adults, they know from their point of view that we are quite different, and that we seem to be quite magical in some ways, but we're distant. Whereas some child who is just that little bit bigger than you is more like you, but also has some knowledge that you don't, and so the gap there is smaller, and the things that you can learn sort of from someone who is just a few steps ahead of you in whatever you're doing is going to be, it's going to be something that's more relatable to you. Obviously, this is an idea that's quite well known in sort of educational circles. It actually goes all the way back to Lev Vygotsky's sort of idea of what the area you learn is just 1 or 2 steps beyond where you are. But the best person to sort of to be there at that 1 or 2 steps away from you is that slightly bigger child. Teachers and people trying to educate can learn to do this, but the person that's doing it without effort is a bigger child. And it's a great it's great to realize that children themselves know this, that they sort of
I have a comment on that.
Yeah,
it's just because when we play for kindergartens, for example, then you have if the group know each other, sometimes it could go a little crazy. But in the minute they are with another group from another kindergarten, maybe some elder children, there's something happening in the audience that helps us on stage also. So that could be what you're talking about, that they are sitting still. I have to sit still, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge about at what age do infants or babies, when do they, start to learn from the older siblings or people of their own age? When do they start to?
From their own age is quite interesting, because obviously from the moment you're born, you're picking up things from people who are older than you. It's sort of everybody is older than you the moment you're born, and in that first year, actually, because you can't regulate your own interactions with people very well, and you don't even know who you are, you can't interact with another baby. And everybody sees this. If you put 2 8-month-olds down to play, they pretty much just play parallel to each other. They don't really interact, because it's quite a difficult thing to sort of try and interact. And the first time that sort of children really have friends, sort of have that person that's they know and see as an equal, it's hard to say exactly when that happens, but it does seem to happen at around the similar time that they have a developing sense of who they are as well, so that they a lot of measures of self-identity sort of seem to happen between 18 months and 2 years, and that the classic test of if you put a little red dot on the forehead of a child without them realizing, and then show them in the mirror, under 18-month-old, they don't really connect that that's them that they're seeing in the mirror. They don't try and rub it off on their face. They might in the mirror. Beyond that, they've got this sense of self-identity. They've got sort of like this idea of who they are, and then they start to be able to interact sort of with other people their own age. They start to have friendships, and then they're once they're in kindergarten, and as you say, they form these group dynamics of, right, we're all of a similar age and we start to know each other quite well. Then that's an entirely different creature. That's a whole class of 3-year-olds is a remarkable thing. But from the very beginning, they've always very sensitive to people who are bigger than them, and so that's there from the beginning. And actually being able to to be in a situation where you are you start off always being the little one, and to be at the first time you're in a situation where you are there with an equal, or maybe even now you're the big one, is quite a dramatic thing for a child. It's also why so much of the things I research are things like laughter, which are about putting everybody on the same level. If I'm holding a conversation with a child, I'm the knowledgeable partner, and you're not. If we're just both laughing about something, we've both got the same level of access to what it is that's funny, and we're on the same level. And I think that's a really sort of key thing to think about all the way through, that that the children themselves are very, very sensitive to this.
You mentioned that also the other day around laughter, that of course it's something that puts you on the same level, and it's something that can just be really funny. But you told us about this experiment that you did with groups of children as opposed to like one-on-one. Would you please share that with the I find it really interesting.
I think this is where we started talking about this, when we were talking about what is that group dynamic, what is happening in an audience. And my research has been like, what does laughter mean for babies? And I sort of quite often fighting against this preconception that, laughter is jokes, laughter is something surprising happening and us responding to that. But actually, it's much more that connection. Laughter is the link between one person and another. And we did this performance-based sort of experiment, also this group audience-based experiment, as a way to show that. So what we did was we got a quite lots of children from a preschool, and a quite funny cartoon, Bernard the bear, who's a very clumsy bear, and he falls over a lot. So we got them to watch this cartoon, just like 4 or 5 minutes, and they would either watch one episode on their own, one episode in a group of 2, or one episode in a group of 4 or 6. And then we'd count how many times they smiled and laughed, and see what was going on. And so all the episodes were mixed together, so we know that they were as funny as each other. And when the children were on their own, they laughed about this much, whatever that much is, in 5 minutes. And then we sort of counted the number of laughs for a child when there was one other child. and he went from this much to this much, 7 times as much laughter. And then we put them in this group of 4 or 6, and again, compared to one laughing on their own, it was 7 or 8 times as much. And so what's really important there is that just one other person multiplies the amount of laughter that you're producing by a factor of 7. So that the laughter is not, oh, Bernard the bear is not 7 times funnier if you're there with another child. Bernard the bear is just as funny, but your laughter is there to share your response with the other child. And as somebody's just said in the chat, laughter is contagious. But then when we looked, but again, this wasn't the most important thing, because when we looked at our group of 6, if it was just laughs spreading from one to the next, then we would expect there to be even more laughter in this big group. And actually, again, it's only the same as to being one other person. So all of these children were laughing in response to, like, I laugh at this thing and I'm sharing my response with others. And I think, you know, then that can build up to be a very joyful situation, but it doesn't require like a big chain of, right, the very giggly one.
It's so funny that we often find, no, if one is laughing, then it's da 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 da. And but it's also we work a lot with, you know, about adults when they're laughing and when children laughing, and this is 2 different things. And if we make a scene where the adult laughing, the children got the feeling of, what did I miss? What did I miss? What is funny? I don't understand.
Oh my God.
So we try not to do that. And it's, I think it's very difficult to find the space where you say, when we're laughing together, and then I'm happy. If this happened, it's lovely when the children and the adult laughing together.
I wonder what is the funniest moment or most reliably funny thing in Grow, would you say?
It's very funny because we're never working. It's a little bit funny, but we're never working with to be funny.
No.
You know?
No.
So we try not to make scenes when we are funny. And sometimes when we find out that we are funny, we try to a little bit, but why?
The dog is good.
The dog is good.
Yeah, the dog is good. That is funny.
Some things grow bigger than you would think. Dogs.
Yeah.
I once had a little puppy with big paws, and the puppy grew and grew and grew, and one day it was so big that I no longer. And then I turn on the shadow play, and then you don't know who is walking who, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you just see a guy running after the dog. I see the children, they react on it, and I think because dogs, we all have a dog.
But do you remember the first time that we play it? They find it very funny.
Yeah.
And then they come up in the back, they start to say, go on the dog, go on the dog, go on the dog, go on the dog. And we think, okay, this is not the right way we want them to act. This is not the right. So we had changed this a little bit. So it's very funny that you're talking about laughter, because in our work, we laugh when they laugh, but we not make performance where we think, oh, in this space,
in this scene,
we need them to have fun.
Yeah. This
so
is the funny
it's
scene.
not that we're not making funny performance, but we try not to make them like, this is what we want. And this is maybe because we want to make the space that you can find this funny.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a good question. We will think a little bit about it.
Next show, we definitely have a funny scene.
Maybe.
We have a few questions in the chat, all very interesting. We have one from Manuela, and they say, hi, Christian and Pernille, is the audience engagement very different if the performance is for preschools, schools, or for families? Talking about the group dynamics and laughter and stuff like that.
Yeah, they are different, but Oh, yeah, this is the difficult
When
part to explain.
When we work, we make, this is very, we are the only one who make, when we make theater for small children, we also make theater for the adults. So we try to make our performance. I'm curious about how can we make rooms where we try to tell, for example, the granddad story. For me, I hope that the adult think, oh, maybe I should remember to give my child more room where the time is not there, because this is important. I can remember it. So it gives me something that is important for me. And do I give my child this? So this is, I'm curious about how I can tell stories so the adult not is boring. In another way, so there we work very much to make it so the children and the adult have a good feeling to being together.
Also, I have a very good feeling about when we have family shows, because then I really have the feeling that they go home and talk about the show after they have seen the show. They bring it to bring it with them. It's not always I get the feeling when I'm in a kindergarten, because then they go to another room. Yeah, it's so difficult. But I really like family shows.
Yeah, and when we make it for only children, we make performance for 2 and 6 years. And we really like to have children from 2 to 6, because we found out that when what you're talking about, that children, if they're growing up, the small children look at them and see how they act, because some of the children, this is the first time they see theater, but it's different. Sometimes we only have them for someone that we only have them for 2 to 4, make performance for that. And this is
sometimes only babies. When you only play for babies also, so that's another.
That's younger. So we try to, but if they're very young, we find out that we have to do it a little more slow. You know?
Especially the reaction from the words out of my mouth till they receive it and they react is a little longer, which is. And
they stop when they are 2, 3. They stop not. They don't say what we're saying, for example. So we try to make our performance of this different thing. We call it a hook. A hook. They take in. And when we play a lot abroad, internationally, and we always have a translator on stage with us, which gives the shows a very nice calm, because we say our text, translation, and I really like this. Give the time to the text, and receiving an interaction. So it's very different whatever we do, but we like it has different qualities, everything, and we like it all. And some performance work best only for children, and some work best in the family. And then we have to work so that both is
So there is definitely this this element of sharing and having experiences together in your work. And also I just wanted to finish off the talk with the question. I think we said that in the event description as well, so we would not skip that one because it's an important one. It's about why growing skills or acquiring knowledge, why is that the key to happiness? And this is a big topic for like the last 2 minutes of the conversation, but I think we would like to share that with you as well. Do you have something to say about it, Caspar?
Yes, absolutely. So the 2-minute version might be quite condensed, but essentially researcher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi went out to find the happiest people in the world in all walks of life, from postmen and classical musicians, to even people who were in prison for like a 30-year sentence. And for all of these people, happiness was connected with always being at the edge of what you were good at, and always trying to move a little step further on in your skills, which is something that children are sort of automatically always doing. They're always, tomorrow they'll be slightly better at something than they were yesterday. So children sort of have the secret of happiness that sort of adults have to rediscover, and or maybe adults lose, to be able to be in this state of actually feeling yourself acquiring new skills, feeling yourself growing, quite literally. And when you feel like that, you feel like there's a purpose, you feel like there's a direction to what you're doing. And yeah, this is one of sort of the most profound ways of being like genuinely, continually, consistently rewarded and happy in life.
Yeah, so again, it's all about being in the moment, right? And
yeah,
talking
so
about think about with the timeless state.
The other part of that obviously is, if you focus on what your goal is and trying to get better, you'll be frustrated because you'll always be sort of chasing after this thing which is ahead of you. If you are in the moment, if you are right, what am I doing right now? How am I doing it? Then this is something that this research found, that these happiest people went into this timeless, it's called a flow state. It's a sort of a moment of timelessness. You sort of forget what's going on because you're completely absorbed in the present. So this was the key from this research. That's also what meditation is trying to train people to do. And for 2,500 years, sort of meditation teachers say, right, we're not trying to empty your mind. We're trying to get you to empty the past worries and the future worries, to be able to absorb what's immediately in front of you. So to be in that timeless state. So
on that note, I think I can say on behalf of Theatre Madam Bach that this is obviously the ideal state to put our audiences in, right? I mean, to give that that space and time for children and adults to be together in the moment and in the present, and feeling the wind and that the ants have 6 legs and all the little things that make yeah. Great. Time's actually up.
What time?
What time? I forgot the clock. No, I didn't. But I do hope that everybody found some inspiration or some. Of course, it's impossible to go in depth in 1 hour with all these topics that we just threw out. So I'm quite sure that the conversation with you, Caspar, is not finished. We'll have to take it up next time. And of course, if we do it online like this, we will invite all of you, and we hope to see you again. One last thing, as you all know, this session has been recorded, and we did so because Christian and Pernille are currently working on a knowledge bank, which will officially open, I think, in June this summer, and conversations like this will be online there. But do stay in touch and find us on Facebook, and write to Christian if you have any questions.
Yeah, please.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us from all over the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, have a nice Saturday out there. And thank you, Caspar, for your insights.
It's always fascinating.
Yes.
Hey.
See you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.